Hello, everyone, and welcome to our show. Once again, I'm here with Tamara Hammond, and Tamara Hammond holds a PhD in world languages and cultures from University of Utah, a master's in Russian from Columbia, and a bachelor in history. She taught modern and ancient world history, and her dissertation examined digital media and the rise of independent journalism. And her research includes Western propaganda, censorship, and technocracy. Hammond has published 4 books and multiple articles in academic and scientific journals. Thank you, Tamara, for coming on to the show once again. And today we're going to discuss your book, How to Avoid a PhD, which you, in parentheses, put penalty for hardworking dummies. And this subject is very interesting to me myself because my daughter, I have a 22-year-old, she is getting her bachelor's in, this year, supposed to complete this year, and she's considering getting a PhD, actually. So I want to know why she should not be getting her PhD. Go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. The question is very interesting because young people are asking the same question every day. On one hand, it's a very difficult path, and depending on what your goal is, if your goal is to make money, there are very few fields that you can make money. That these fields are probably high tech, medicine, and of course business. We can add lawyers and other specialists, but they don't require a PhD. In any event, the student debt that leads to this education is going to be enormous, and she is going to be caught up. She can quit after graduation. She's going to be compelled to work and compelled to obey the rules. So if she doesn't like the field, like in medicine, it's very controversial since COVID. If she doesn't like what her job is, she can't quit because she has enormous debt to pay back. And this applies to, of course, to other fields. So the best way, if you're after knowledge, the best way is to be autodidact and do it yourself. The book is not specifically about PhD. It's not specifically about academia, although it's an important part of it. The subtitle is Debunking the Meritocracy Myth. That's a theme that it's explored in the book. And I want to say that the book is available for free on my Substack, Tamara Yankova Hammond at substack.com. And of course, the paper copy could be obtained via Amazon or Barnes and Nobles. And this is the idea. You can see on the cover, I'm drowning in student debt, pile of money behind me, and as I'm climbing the educational ladder. And of course, the ego is dangling the graduation cap, which is the temptation. I just want to read a couple of blurbs on the back, because they're very good summary of the book. One is by William Arking, senior editor of Newsweek, award-winning journalist and best-selling author. Quote, Tamara Hammond's book makes a cogent argument while criticizing both the government and the news media for being members of the war party. Her examination of propaganda and the information wars that are waged in our society asks important questions, ones that are missing from the mainstream. And the other one is Tamara Hammond's book gives us a crosscut to self-enlightenment in a way that renders classic academic credentials unnecessary. A very rich collection of evidence shows that contemporary savvy, intelligent humans do not need the current educational hierarchical ladder. This is from Georgia Nikolova, a musician, composer, and an author. I think that answers your question pretty much. But in short, this book is an indictment of the American political, economic, and educational systems that prove this country is not a democracy, but a plutocracy. It refutes the myth of meritocracy widespread by a corrupt media monopoly, currently reduced to 5 owners. I'll be talking a lot about the media because I think they're the main culprit here in corrupting our democracy. Also, I argue that naive thinkers and intellectuals, including the author of this book, fall victims to the educational system and propaganda in America. I was heavily brainwashed by a sophisticated industry called public relations, founded by Edward Bernays in the 1920s, and even more effective today. In the first book, this is a sequel, I was able to see through and decipher some important aspects of the propaganda. For example, financial, predatory lending, the food and drug fraudulent industry, and the two-party system that works for the same elites was obvious to me from the beginning. Paradoxically, however, as I delved into my academic studies, I was swayed away from my critical perspective. Upon immersion in higher education, both as a student and as an instructor, the deliberate promotion of corporate agenda gradually felt natural and acceptable in the complete absence of opposite views. And now, chapter by chapter, I'm gonna try to be fast. So the first chapter is about the failure of mainstream media to counterbalance the three estates of power, a short history of the corruption of the fourth estate. Fourth estate is the mainstream media, and they're supposed to be the watchdog and to keep an eye on the other three estates of power, which they failed to do. Monopolization of the mass media from the 1970s to the 1996 Telecommunication Act that eliminated restrictions in the media ownership and cross-media consolidation. As a result, since 2004, there are only 5 owners of the media. In 2025, are AT&T, Disney, Comcast, News Corporation, and Viacom. According to Chomsky and Herman, there are 5 media filters: ownership, advertisement, experts, promoting industries, flag, and common enemy. The dark fate of dissident journalists, which comprises the flag. Some examples are Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, who was imprisoned. Gary Webb from Mercury News was assassinated. Chris Hedges from the New York Times and Phil Donahue from MSNBC were both fired for their standing against the Iraq War. Mark Lamont Hill from CNN and Katie Helber from Rising the Hill are both fired for their pro-Palestinian position. And here are 2 important books, Media Monopoly and Mainstream Media as Tools of Propaganda. The book by Ben Bagdikian of 1983, The New Media Monopoly, and Edward Herman and Noam Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent from 1988. Chapter 2 is about the dissident alternative media outlets. The critics of the media are the fifth estate, and thus the term the fifth estate, which is as a result of the failure of the fourth estate, the mainstream media. The rise of dissident media as opposition to the fourth estate. And here my motto of the chapter is a quote by George Orwell. These people don't see that if you encourage totalitarian methods, the time may come when they will be used against you instead of for you. And some events of the recent history, for example, in 2020, there was a big demonstration of this notion. The pharma industry takeover, COVID scare, censorship, draconian measures such as lockdowns, mandatory vaccinations, and the firing of medical workers, soldiers, employees who did not comply, and journalists, doctors who defied the propaganda narrative. That was a big demonstration of how this was only possible because of the media lies. And here, Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, imprisoned from 2019 to 2024. He never had to retract his reporting since the launching of WikiLeaks in 2006. He received more than 20 awards, including the last one during this book was Gary Webb's Freedom of the Press Reward in 2020. Since then, he has more awards in 23 and 24 that are not included because they weren't present at the time. And both parties cheer for endless wars. Democrats for the war with Russia, Republicans for war with China and or Iran, and mass media support all wars. Back in 2011, Julian Assange warned the world that nearly every war that had been started in the past 50 years has been a result of the media lies. The discredited mainstream media continue to use the same lazy tactics and deceive the public with similar false flag stories because they are not held accountable and there are no negative consequences for them when debunked. On the contrary, they get promoted and financially rewarded instead of losing their jobs and never have to retract any of the erroneous information they reported. Because they work for the ruling class, the establishment media do not suffer punishment when they report falsehoods on behalf of their superiors. The public contempt does not affect them since it's irrelevant to their material lifestyles and careers. And here are good examples how they all do the same thing. MSNBC, Fox News, CNN salivate over Trump's airstrike on Iran. Mainstream media pundits couldn't praise President Trump strikes on Iran enough. And that's just from June this year, June 2025.
It's actually sickening, to be honest with you. I can't watch the mainstream news at all. And I know many people who can't watch them the same like me, just because it is nauseating. It really is. When you put it on, and every channel tells you the same thing over and over, salivating over people dying somewhere for no particular reason. This is quite disturbing, actually.
Absolutely. They're responsible for all this blood. They have blood on their hands because they're cheering up these crimes. Absolutely agree. And that leads to another concern, transhumanism, which has been pushed forever, and only now it's possible to be finally achieved because technology reached the point that it's possible, the merge between biology and high tech. And this is the role of high tech specialists, which leads to the dictatorship. And here are some examples. Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google, who is also the biggest donor to the Broad Institute, as he recently endowed 150 million to the Institute. The Broad Institute aims to merge human biology with high-tech machines to implement the digital dystopia that Yuval Harari suggested at Davos. The preparation and the pursuit of transhumanism are not done for the better condition of society, but merely for control. The powerful symbiosis between academia, science, government, and high technology poses a serious threat to democracy.
Tamara, I have a question about transhumanism and its relevance to your book and to academia and to the ruling class. Is this transhumanism, do you believe it's only for the rich and powerful, or what is this for?
It's going to be two tiers. On one level, the rich and powerful are going to improve their genes and become way superior to everybody, so they hope. And conversely, regular people are going to be dumbed down. They're going to suffer some kind of atrophy of their brains because they're going to get addicted to artificial intelligence. We're seeing this even now.
It's happening, It's happening.
People depend on AI for everything. They ask questions, and so far AI is not off. It tells the truth about many things, but we don't know when they're going to switch to telling lies, and we are not going to know the difference. So we should be testing every answer. I usually only answer questions that I know the answer to, just to check if they're going to say the truth. But we have to be very, very skeptical. This is a very slippery slope. And the transhumanism is an old idea. It starts in the 50s with Huxley, Julian Huxley, who was the chair of British Eugenics Society, Director General of UNESCO. He coined the term transhumanism in 1950s, back then. And now Eric Schmidt, the Google CEO, chair of National Security Commission of AI, Defense Innovation Advisory Board, Trilateral Commission, and Bilderberg. He is implementing these ideas on practice now.
So let me just get it straight. So the superior humans will be the high class humans who will select their own genes, and the rest will be just the biomass.
Exactly. And in case they don't need us, that's why they want to reduce us to probably 500,000, just a few servants for them. They don't need the entire population.
The last Bilderberg meeting in 2025 in the summer, on their agenda, the depopulation was one of the main points. And I was quite concerned and questioning that as to what depopulation are they talking about, because current projections and global projections of population is to grow from 8 billion to 10 billion. So what depopulation were they referring to? And this makes perfect sense now.
Exactly. Wars, pandemics, epidemics are going to take care of this.
We have been in the lab since 2020.
It's going on right now. That's why it's important to warn people. And here is chapter 3, the regulatory capture of the 4 estates of power by neoliberal robber barons. NAFTA and the Crime Bill of 1994, Telecommunication Act of 1996, 1999 repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act, the Patriot Act of 2001, and the Great Reset of 2020. There are consequences to excessive hope, just as there are to other forms of intemperance. One of these is disillusionment, another is anger, and a third is this book. This is a quote from Thomas Frank in his book, Listen Liberal, from 2016. I did something similar. Instead of getting angry or disillusioned, I just wrote this book. A number of legislations designed to destroy democracy and benefit billionaires and corporations. Here are a quick summary of this legislation. After North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement from 1994, sourcing most well-paying jobs to Mexico, Latin America, and Asia for cheap labor. As a result, Michigan, Illinois, and Indiana lost close to 1 million factory jobs from 2000 to 2010. Crime Bill of 1994 secured a pipeline from high school to prison, free labor for Victoria's Secret, Walmart, and profit for private prison industry. Over 2 million prison population by 2000, which comprises 20% of the world prison population, while we are only 4% of the global population.
Just to clarify, this is in the United States, right?
In the United States, we have the largest prison population in the world. We are a prison state. And this is only to extend free labor. This is a different form of slavery. And the crime bill actually compels judges to send to prison for minor crimes, to sentence prisoners for minor crimes for 10, 20 years, which is slavery, labor. The Communication Act of 1996, consolidation and monopoly, led to ownership of 5 corporations. The fairness doctrine since 1940 was repealed in 1997. Net neutrality rules since 2005 repealed in 2017. That's how democracy is destroyed. The fairness doctrine required, when you have a position, political or otherwise position, to invite the counter argument, to invite guests who have the opposite position. And since 1997, we don't have to do this anymore in the media. The media doesn't have to do this. And Glass-Steagall Act, which was since 1933, was repealed in 1999 and led to the financial crisis in 2008. The Glass-Steagall Act allows investment banks and commercial banks to merge, which led to the crisis. Then we have the Patriot Act of 2001, extended many times and still in power. The most notorious Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act to spy on American people is still in power. And there are 2 interesting simulations. Dark Winter from June 2001 in Johns Hopkins University, where CIA, FBI, Secretary of Defense, academics, and mainstream media were present. And the simulation was anthrax attacks. That's 3 months before 9/11. And then we have another simulation, Event 2001 simulation from October 2019, also in Johns Hopkins University, pandemic tabletop exercise, sponsored by the World Economic Forum, Bill Gates, and Johns Hopkins University. This is
what a coincidence.
Prior to the pandemic.
I don't believe in coincidences.
Exactly. As a result, Patriot Act and CARES Act were passed. Because of the CARES Act, we have 493 new billionaires since COVID, while 8 million Americans fell into poverty.
We were just talking to my ex-coworker about the CARES Act and the fraud that resulted from this act. impact because there were billions of dollars distributed through the IRS credits, so to speak, to businesses. And now they find out that more than half of that was fraudulent. And that's where these billionaires came from.
Absolutely, they all got rewarded.
And of course, there is no recovery from that.
No
money is coming back.
No response.
It's one of the biggest transfers of wealth in the history of this country.
Upward, yeah, transfer to the 1%. Then chapter 4, the role of academia in supporting the status quo, from Walter Lippmann and Edward Bernays to Barack Obama and Sheryl Sandberg. The propaganda wheel is always well greased. And this is what the role of academia is. That's why I advise against getting higher education, because you get propagandized and you become a tool of propaganda. You have to do that in order to be in academia. And here is a quote from Albert Einstein: "The only thing that interferes with my learning is my education." Since 2020, 500,000 jobs lost in higher education, while the richest top 20 universities increased their endowment with over 300 billion. They set and sanctioned the boundaries of knowledge and the acceptable political and social views. Harvard received 21.5 billion, Yale 21.1 billion. And here the revolving door, Alan Greenspan, Columbia alumni. He was Treasury Secretary for 5 consecutive terms, and he is the architect of repealing Glass-Steagall Act. Larry Summers, Treasury Secretary and Director of National Economic Council during the 2008 financial crash. Ben Bernanke, Federal Reserve in 2008 during the crash. Tim Geithner, Treasury Secretary. They all designed the bailouts of the banks in the 2008.
They just didn't bail out the regular people.
No, regular people lost 5 million houses. Homes were lost for like regular people while they got the bailed out. Steve Mnuchin, Treasury Secretary of 2020, Janet Yellen, 2024, Bessent, recent Treasury Secretary of 2025. Besides the bailouts of the banks, they benefited from financial crisis, not only 2008, previous and post crisis, like the one they're preparing now. And Walter Lippmann wrote the book Public Opinion: How People Decide the Role of News, Propaganda, and Manufactured Consent in Modern Democracy and Political Elections in 1922. As you can see, he coined the term manufactured consent, and he referred to the public as the bewildered herd. Also, Bernays wrote the book Propaganda in 1928, where he posits that the public should be influenced deliberately by invisible men. And more in modern history, Barack Obama and Sheryl Sandberg. For example, Obama, according to National Business Press executives, quote, "We've been selling and marketing candidates like toothpaste since Reagan, and this is the greatest achievement we have," end of quote. As a result, Obama's cabinet was dictated by Citibank, including Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel, Secretary of Homeland Security Janet Napolitano, UN Ambassador Susan Rice, Attorney General Eric Holder, Health and Human Services Kathleen Sebelius. He bailed the biggest banks in 2009, while 5 million families lost their homes. Also during Obama, the movement Occupy Wall Street started, which tells you a lot about the economy, how people united against the 1%. And here are on the left, Walter Lippmann, Edward Bernays on the right, 2 intellectuals that launched and advocated propaganda since the 1920s. These are the fathers of propaganda. And more recently, Barack Obama, he persecuted more whistleblowers under the 1917 Espionage Act than all previous presidents, including Snowden, Thomas Drake, Charlie Manning, John Kiriakou, Jeffrey Sterling, Stephen Kim, Shemai Leibowitz. Now, Sheryl Sandberg, She was a research assistant at the World Bank, chief of staff of Treasury Department, CEO of Google, CEO of Facebook. She was media made feminist. She wrote the book Lean In, Women Work and the Will to Lead in 2013. Her message is pro-corporate, pro-exploitation, representing wealthy, powerful, dominant in digital media women. She hired only 22% female engineers during her tenure, 4% Hispanic, 1% Black, which contradicts her idea. In the book, she claims that women, since they are 50% of the population, they should be present in every position, also 50%. So she contradicts her own idea.
She probably blames the women for that, saying they're not prepared.
They're not working hard enough.
They're not hardworking, right?
And she publicly supported her benefactor, Larry Summers, when he resigned in 2006 after his derogatory remarks in 2005 about women's underrepresentation being due to issues of intrinsic aptitude in math and science. He literally claimed that women are dumb and they're not good enough to be in math and science. That's why he resigned, and she publicly defended him. And during Summers' tenure at Harvard, he was president of Harvard, the female tenure track positions fell from 36% to 13%. And during his last year, only 4 women were appointed to tenure track positions out of 28 positions. So it wasn't just rhetoric, he proved it in practice that he absolutely chauvinist. Both Obama and Sandberg have been chosen and lifted up in the new liberal marketplace because they are highly educated intellectuals who seemingly represent people of color and women. Obama and Sandberg convincingly sell the illusion that women and minorities can make it if they work hard enough, they have the right education, and have the motivation of these 2 chosen leaders.
Actually, so it did work in the government. So in the government jobs that I, resigned from or retired from,
50%.
And women actually they try to promote the women, especially women of color. They do put an emphasis on women of color.
Were they 50%?
I can only tell you from my observations of the 2 offices that I worked at, but in those 2 offices, women did represent at least 50% of managers, top managers.
Okay, so the government careers are better than private.
For women, and especially women of color.
Okay, that makes sense. Chapter 5, Academic Dissidents, the Glaring Absence of Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and Chris Hedges from the Mainstream Media. And this is Chomsky on the left and Chris Hedges on the right. He's the one that was fired from the New York Times. And Cornel West was denied tenure in Harvard in 2021 for his pro-Palestinian position, criticism of Obama, and supporting Occupy Wall Street. West previously had tenured positions at Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. Despite this, he was denied tenure. West resigned in protest and condemned his colleagues as talented yet deferential. One of his books, he wrote many books, but one of his books is The Rich and the Rest of Us, a Poverty Manifesto, co-written with Tavis Smiley in 2012. And the other 2, Chomsky, he condemned foreign imperialistic policies, anti-war, anti-two-party system, corporatization of academia. He was against all this. Here's a curious citation from him. In America, everything is for sale. I can buy me as much freedom as I want. End of quote. Despite being among the 10 most quoted in the world people between 1980 and 1902, he was right after Freud and before Hegel, among people like Marx, Lenin, Shakespeare, Aristotle, the Bible, Plato, Freud, Hegel, and Cicero. He's never on TV or major news media. Total eclipse. And Chris Hedges, investigative journalist, was correspondent in Central America, Middle East, and Eastern Europe. Won Pulitzer Prize for reporting in 2002. Fired from the New York Times for his anti-Iraq war standing after 15 years of tenure. Activist in Occupy Wall Street, wrote Occupy Wall Street Journal, wrote multiple books, among them America the Farewell Tour 2018. And another book is What Every Person Should Know About War, in 2003. He knows, as a war correspondent, he knows firsthand what war means.
So in media, basically, journalists cannot speak the truth. They can't, or they will lose their career.
They lose everything. They lose their livelihood. Curiously, most of them achieve to persuade themselves, and they start believing it, because it's very hard to have double thinking. And some of them really believe the lies they say to people.
Of course.
Because they wouldn't be able to sleep at night if they didn't.
And I think it goes for the politicians as well. I think they have to kind of like convince themselves that this is the right thing to do, even though deep inside they probably know it's not.
That's exactly right. Chapter 6, the infiltration and co-option of genuine movements, neutralizing opposition through corruption and violence, from the Black Panther and the National Organization of Women to Black Lives Matter and Me Too movements. And here is a quote from Fred Hampton. We are not a racist organization because we understand that racism is an excuse used for capitalism, and we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Fred Hampton was chairman of Chicago Black Panther chapter, cold-bloodedly murdered by the police in the middle of the night in his bed by his pregnant wife when he was 21. Hampton was too dangerous because he advocated for uniting all marginalized people regardless of their race, nationality, or gender.
I'm sorry, did you say that his pregnant wife murdered him?
No, he was sleeping next to his pregnant wife when they assassinated him. The police came and murdered him next to his wife. She was present when they murdered him.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to clarify that.
They just raided his home and murdered him while his pregnant wife survived. No, she survived. And here he's on the left, Fred Hampton, and Martin Luther King on the right. And here a list of activists, black activists, murdered by the Secret Service or jailed because they refused to cooperate with authorities. One is Martin Luther King, anti-war activist, anti-imperialist, against exploitation, blackmailed by the FBI and asked to commit suicide. When he refused, he was assassinated in 1968. Malcolm X, revolutionary and human rights activist, killed in 1965 at the age of 40. And here are some disturbing statistics. According to the Statista, a German company that provides statistics for 160 countries and 170 industries. From 2018 to 2022, US police killed 5,097 unarmed citizens, averaging 1,019 per year, reaching 1,097 in 2022. In comparison, the UK, during the same period, there were only 13 fatalities.
And of course, the UK is much smaller, but even if you take the size comparison, you cannot compare 1,097 people murdered by the police to 13.
It's
completely disproportionate.
Yes.
And to other countries too.
And as far as I know, they don't even wear weapons in the UK. They're not allowed. They only have tasers. I think so. Here, US police wear riot gear at peaceful protests and use weapons arbitrarily because there are no consequences for killing unarmed citizens. I think there was only 1 or 2 persons indicted for manslaughter. Among all these 1,000 victims, only 1 or 2 were indicted.
I remember.
And here, Me Too was founded in 2006 by Tarana Burke and popularized and corrupted later by Alyssa Milano in 2017. The movement started with legitimate grievances and was turned into a partisan vendetta. Like every other genuine movement, the best way to neutralize it is to make it partisan. Controlled by the Democratic Party, it only persecuted Republican offenders and turned a blind eye to victims of Democrat offenders. Example, Tara Reid, sexually assaulted by Biden when she worked for him as an intern, smeared, lost her job, and had to flee to Russia. She's currently in Russia. Rose McGowan, who defended Reid and wrote the preface of her book Left Out from 2020, asked what a long con this two-party system has run on American public, what a long con people have run on themselves. Similarly, feminist icon Gloria Steinem Steinem, was proven a CIA agent by her own admission in an interview for the New York Times in 1967. We all know now that she was implemented by the CIA to corrupt the movement. Chapter 7, the climate danger change disaster. From the oil industry sabotage to the new Green Deal profiteers, no one has the well-being of species in mind. Why is the oil industry heavily invested in green energy? Because they profit from it. Manufacturing solar panels, mills, and turbines require mining and processes fueled by oil. World Economic Forum's goal is to enslave the world population and push them into 15-minute cities, impose carbon credits, and no possession of cars or flying in a world dominated by AI. The COVID-19 pandemic was a lab test for this, and it is openly admitted in Klaus Schwab's book COVID-19, The Great Reset, and by Schmidt and Kissinger in The Age of AI from 2021. Movements like Sunrise, Sierra, and 300.org are all funded by Rockefeller foundations, billionaires, and corporations, also by the oil industry, and they're all compromised.
And they all know that there is no green energy. There is no green energy. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, this is a lie, and they just use it to scare us and to herd us into this 15-minute towns, cities. Here are the books: COVID-19, The Great Reset by Klaus Schwab. It was written in June 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, and he lays out the future digital prison for us. And the other one, 2021, Eric Schmidt and Henry Kissinger's book, Age of AI, Visions, a Future of Wars and Controlled by AI.
They salivate over this.
Over future wars where the AI are going to do all the killing, and they're going to be more massive and more precise. That's exactly right. Yeah. Chapter 8, the dissident indie media. If they can see through propaganda, we can too. And here are some quotes from Einstein. Few people are capable of expressing with equanimity opinions that differ from the prejudice of their environment. Most people are even incapable of forming such opinions. That's Albert Einstein. If publishers and editors exert themselves to keep certain topics out of print, it is not because they're frightened of prosecution, but because they're frightened of public opinion. George Orwell. He's very right here. And the third quote is from Noam Chomsky. The smart way to keep people passive and obedient is strictly limit the spectrum of acceptable opinion, but allow very lively debate within that spectrum. And ultimately, it is left to the comedians to popularize every filtered news not reported by the mainstream media. Here is a long quote from George Carlin, but very, very true. But there is a reason why education sucks and will never be fixed, because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are there to give you the idea that you have choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They've got the judges in their back pockets, and they own all the big media companies, so they can control the news and all the information you get to hear. He said that in 2005. Chapter 9, never trust politicians, journalists, and academics. They are the ruling class. The minority, the ruling class at present, has the schools and the press, usually the church as well, under their thumb. This enables it to organize and sway the emotions of the masses and makes it stool of them. That's Albert Einstein in 1932.
That's almost 100 years ago, and it's more true than ever now.
Still true, yes. And Chris Hedges, a quote, the Democrats, like Republicans, have no interest in genuine reform. They are wedded to corporate power. They're about appearance, not substance. There is no liberal, much less left or progressive organized political class in the US. That's true. Dissidents who oppose endless wars, workers' exploitation, censorship, and toxic environment usually are also against the false two-party system. Historian and political analyst Thomas Frank wrote in 2000 16. By now, there are only two newspapers across the political aisle, the New York Times and the Washington Post, and they are identical.
They are.
It's a false dichotomy. One and the same party, just different pitch. Matt Taibbi, an author and journalist, wrote in 2021 a book, Hating Corporation, Why Today's Media Makes Us Despise Each Other, where he explains that Chomsky and Herman's 5 media filters still work, but for the fifth filter, common enemy, they found the best version, each other. We are the enemy to each other. Taibbi explains the underlying mechanism of propaganda perfectly well. Quote, it's a subtle, idiosyncratic process that you can stare at for a lifetime and nonetheless not see. End of quote. I know I didn't see it for 15 years. And here are the books. Incorporation from 2021 and Revelations about the phony left-right division and new evidence from declassified documents sparks interest in the event of 1963. That's Oliver Stone's documentary, JFK Revisited, through the magnifying glass of 2021. Very good documentary. And chapter 10, ignorance is propaganda's best friend. Challenging and investigating the official narrative is the only way to educate yourselves and others. Quote from Julian Assange, the number one enemy is ignorance. And I believe that is the number one enemy, that anyone is not understanding what is actually going on in the world. Julian Assange, 2011. To that end, two big industries work to impose ignorance, education and mass media. According to Chomsky, quote, there are huge efforts that do go into making people, to borrow Adam Smith's phrase, as stupid and ignorant as it's possible for a human being to be. This is on purpose. This is consciously made effort to dumb down the public. And the book that changed the way we perceive media, Manufacturing Consent, is dedicated to Alex Carey, a pioneer in exposing corporate propaganda. Alex Carey is an Australian academic and author, revealed that the people in the US have been subjected to unparalleled, extensive, three-quarter-century-long propaganda effort designed to expand corporate rights by undermining democracy and destroying unions. His unpublished essay, Managing Public Opinion, The Corporate Offensive, has been circulating underground for years and finally published posthumously in 1995. Carey points out to the three most essential developments of the 20th century: the growth of democracy, the growth of corporatism, and the growth of corporate propaganda as a means of defense against democracy. So there you go. A good example of comedian that is not telling the truth is Stephen Colbert. He's sold out for money and prestige, celebrating the vaccine shot with this silly dance. I don't know if you've seen that or not. Most recent examples of propaganda efforts: COVID-19 pandemic, illegal mandates and lockdowns and vaccination, the biggest upward transfer of wealth. As a result, 500 new billionaires, while 8 million Americans fell into poverty. The Ukraine proxy war, 113 billion aid, and that's all numbers. It's a lot more now. Casualties on both sides, over 1 million so far, a lot more now. Aims at looting the resources of Ukraine and lab test the future digital prison. They're doing it in Ukraine. They're doing their version of 15-minute CD in the country as we speak. And unconditional support of the genocide in Gaza escalated since October 2023. Estimated, these are also low numbers. It says 63,000, more than 20,000 children. I believe they're way bigger.
Way more.
They're way bigger now.
Now they're estimating over 600,000 people dead.
100,000, 40% of whom are children. Yeah, yes. That's exactly right. Zionism is colonialist, genocidal, and anti-Semitic. And conclusion, the tale of the stairs, the road to hell is full of good intentions. And I give an old tale written by a Bulgarian poet, Hristo Smirnensky, in 1923. And he dedicated it to all who will say it has nothing to do with me. I like this dedication. This allegory epitomizes so well the stories of many activist leaders, grassroots movements, politicians, journalists, and academics who set out to change the world and ended up overwhelmed by the mechanisms of power. Finally, in a pseudo-democracy where propaganda prevails in education, media, and academia, nevertheless, information is still available. Autodidactism is the best way to learn. This means self-learning. Knowledge is still possible thanks to the brave truth tellers who risk everything to report hidden events and powerful secrets, which should be open sources in true democracies. Finally, selling out is a slow, incremental process, and it is easy to be delusional about it. It encroaches on people gradually. It is not a great, glamorous deal when they shake hands with Satan, but it could happen this way too.
Wow. Thank you for presenting, Tamara. This was very, very important and very powerful presentation. So I hope people will learn a little bit at least and open their eyes at least somewhat to see what's actually happening, because people are still in denial. Many are.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
I hope they all can learn. Took me a lot of time and efforts to put this together, and it includes 290 credible sources and 556 references.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you so much, Tamara, and we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.